It's been a rough week for the Gray Lady. The New York Times lost a top editor after the paper received backlash over an opinion piece on the George Floyd protests. Should he have left, and what does this mean for journalism? Here to answer those questions is St. John's University professor and journalism expert Mike Rizzo. So, Mike, as you know, Republican Senator Tom Cotton wrote an opinion column calling for the military to be used to deal with protests. It drew a lot of criticism, especially because he mentioned Antifa and said police bore the brunt of the violence. But should Times editor James Bennet have resigned because of it?
Well, the New York Times has control over who its personnel are, who works for them, and what they feel should be the right people in that position. The concern that I have related to journalism is that there was, as you mentioned, backlash. And there was backlash because people felt that this op-ed should not have been in the Times in the first place. And the Times has control over the content that it has. And that's good. That allows for a free press, no one telling a newspaper or a news organization what it should put out. But the role of the op-ed, and op-ed, by the way, stands for opposite editorial. And opposite is not just geographic, usually opposite the page of the editorial writing, but it's opposite a lot of times in opinion and thinking. And in fact, when the New York Times started its op-ed page in 1970, it talked about welcoming divergent views. They wanted to have people with no connection to the Times who would offer different opinions. So the Times has the right to do what it wants with its personnel, but we should be in a position, because there is a long tradition of people trying to espouse different opinions when news comes up, and we should be able to be open to listening to those positions.
So that's the whole thing. I mean, this is an opinion piece. So are those columns treated differently than regular news columns? Are they still copy edited? What's, the Times' responsibility with that?
Yes, those are checked. Those are looked at so that something that is egregiously wrong, something that really espouses violence or professes something that really is, again, outrageous and not based on, what people can think is the fact. And I don't want to make that seem like it's not factual, but it's, again, opinion. So those are checked. And in this case, there are differing opinions from Senator Cotton as to what was checked and from the Times as to what was checked. But they're not journalism, because journalism should be factual stories based on what happened. These are people's opinions.
All right, so first Bennet defended the opinion piece, then said it was wrong to run it. He actually admitted he didn't even read it before it ran online. Did the Times fail in their publishing standards here?
Well, that's the issue that I think the Times has to address. If they have standards, like any good newspaper should have standards, any good news organization should have standards, and they fail to follow that standard, that's an internal matter that, again, they should address. They should explain to people what they are addressing, and they've started to do that. And that transparency will help news consumers know that the Times is doing its best to present not only news reporting, but also opinion and editorial pieces that really are well thought out and properly researched.
But why is this happening now? It's not the first time the Times has run a controversial opinion piece. As a matter of fact, in 2014, a column ran titled "Pedophilia, a Disorder, Not a Crime." No one resigned after that. So why now?
We're in an emotionally charged time, and that's the concern as well. We can easily get into silos, and I've presented on this. We need a diversity, not just of people of different demographics, ethnicities in our newsrooms. We need the ability for folks to be able to speak their opinions. Now, Tom Cotton doesn't work for the New York Times, but he was offered, or at least allowed, to present a column with a completely different view than most of what the editorial positions of the Times are. So give them that opportunity. The Times then posted a number of columns rebuking what he said. If you look at the piece online, there's almost 2,400 comments. Those are the modern day letters to the editor. Let people read what people have to say that may not agree with what they have to say, and then comment on it. But to now potentially shut it down, you run the risk of people not, again, opening their minds to other people's thoughts.
All right, Mike Rizzo, St. John's University journalism professor. Thanks for being with us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Christine.
If you're watching Currents News on YouTube, be sure to hit the subscribe button and then click on the bell to get instant updates about all of our newest content, because we are putting your faith in the news.